This is the story of the 5 Chinese brothers. The first brother could drink up the entire sea. The second brother had a neck that was harder than iron. The third brother could stretch as far as he wanted. The fourth brother could withstand all types of crackle, 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 fire. And the fifth brother could hold his breath as long as he wanted. One day, the first brother went out to go fishing, and a boy from the village said, "Can I go with you?" But the first brother said, "No, I don't think that's a good idea." But the boy said, "Please, please, 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 please." So finally, the first brother said, "Okay, but when I give the signal, you must come back in." Well, the first brother, he goes out, he drinks up the entire sea, walks out with his bucket, and collects his fish for the day. Well, the boy looks around, and he sees sunken ships. And inside these ships are these huge caskets, and when he opens them up, they're filled with treasure, gold and jewels and diamonds and pearls and emeralds, and he starts stuffing his pockets. And when the first brother gives him the signal to come back inside, does the boy listen? No, he goes, yeah. Finally, the first brother can't hold the water any longer. Out flows the water, and the boy is washed away. Well, the villagers say, "You're responsible for that boy's death, so off with your head." And then he says, "But first, can I go back and say goodbye to my mother?" So he goes back and he switches with the second brother, whose neck was harder than iron. And when they try to chop off his head, guess what happened? Boing! So the villagers say, "We cannot chop off his head. I know what we'll do. We will drown him in the sea." And then he says, "But first, can I go back and say goodbye to my mother?" So he goes back and he switches with the third brother, who can stretch as far as he wants. And they take him, they row him out to sea, and then they throw him in the water, and he stretches, so his head pops out of the water and goes, "Hi guys!" So the villagers say, "We cannot chop off his head, we cannot drown him in the sea. I know what we'll do, we will burn him with crackle, 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 fire." And then he says, "But first, can I go back and say goodbye to my mother?" So he goes back and he switches with the fourth brother, who can withstand all types of crackle, 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 fire. And they take him, they tie him to tree branches, they light a flame, and he goes, "This is very pleasant." So the villagers say, "We cannot chop off his head, we cannot drown him in the sea, we cannot burn him with fire, and we cannot, I know what we'll do, we will suffocate him in a huge oven." So then he says, "But first, can I go back and say goodbye to my mother?" So he goes back and he switches with the fifth brother, who can hold his breath as long as he wants. And they take him and they put him in a huge oven and they fill it with whipped cream. Is whipped cream sour or sweet? That's right, it's sweet. What's sour that looks like whipped cream? That's right, sour cream. And they take them, they put them in a huge oven, they fill it with whipped cream so that there's no room for air, and then they shut the oven door tight. And the villagers stand around the oven all night long saying, "This time we'll make sure the deed is done." Finally, the sun comes up, the rooster crows, they open up the oven door, out flows the whipped cream, and out steps the fifth Chinese brother. What a wonderful nap I had. So the villagers say, "We cannot chop off his head, we cannot drown him in the sea, we cannot burn him with crackle, 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 fire, and we cannot suffocate him. I guess he must be innocent after all." The end.